Welcome, everyone. My name is Melissa Lauren, Content Specialist with Maryland Realtors. And today we are hosting a really fascinating webinar, The Business of Global Business, covering what you need to know to expand your business internationally. And I'm going to now introduce our host, Kathleen D'Artez, the head of our Legal Affairs Department at Maryland Realtors. Kathleen.
Thank you, Melissa. And thank you everyone who's watching and joining us today. The topic, as Melissa had just noted, is the business of global business. And I'm going to just take a quick minute and introduce our panelists. We are thankful to have you guys speaking, and you guys hopefully will learn some practical information from our panelists. I'll start with Aziz Ali Khanji. Many of you may know him already. If you've taken one of our CIPS classes, it's quite likely you've met Aziz already. Aziz is the founding director for the Asian Real Estate Association for Greater Toronto. Aziz is a Canadian. He was recently elected the president of the Americas division of FIABC. I think during your talk, I'm sure you'll explain a little bit more about FIABC. And also most recently, Aziz won an award from the National Association of Realtors at its annual conference last fall. He was the CIPS Instructor of the Year, and I'm happy to say that Maryland Realtors was the Course Provider of the Year. So that's a nice little recognition from the National Association. FIABC, Aziz will speak about that, like I said, during the presentation, but it's an organization to support global business, international business, real estate brokers, residential, commercial, appraisers, architects, kind of to work on all things real estate in a broad scope, and also some environmental aspects as well, looking towards sustainable development goals and helping all of us achieve those goals. So thank you, Aziz. We're happy to have you here. I will next introduce Jackie Bennett. Again, a lot of you know Jackie Bennett, depending on your involvement with the association. Jackie Bennett has been involved. She's been a member with GCAR for a number of years and has been involved pretty much in every capacity possible with GCAR. She's served on a variety of committees, grievance committees, legislative, public policy, RPAC contributions, all those things. She's been very involved. Here with Maryland Realtors, she is a graduate of our Leadership Academy and is currently serving as the chair of our Global Business Committee, which is why she's a panelist today. She's going to share some of that knowledge with you. Jackie's one of her primary responsibilities in the past, or one of her primary accomplishments, I think, in the past, was her involvement with the Women's Council of Realtors. And Jackie had moved up the ladder and served actually as the Maryland State Network President. And I think governor is the term they use as well. So Governor Bennett is joining us today. So we're delighted to have Jackie here as well. And also Steve Lejos is joining us as well. Steve is the owner and managing attorney for KTL Title Group. And Steve is licensed and does settlements and title in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and has a lot of experience with international clients and conducting settlements where either the seller or the buyer, or perhaps both, are overseas or out of the area. So Steve can share some knowledge about some of the practical aspects of that. Steve, I didn't realize this until you'd sent some information over. You are fluent in Spanish and Greek.
Correct.
Well, that's good to know. I don't know too much Greek, and what I do know, I shouldn't say publicly. So
It's all
All
Greek
right.
to me, right?
All right. So, okay, that's everybody we have. I will go ahead. We have a slide deck. I'll share that. It's really just to kind of keep us on track and share what the topics are going to be. Everyone can see that, I'm hoping. Yes. Okay, good. The business of global business is our discussion today, our topic. And we are going to introduce the panelists. I just did. I'm Kathleen D'Artez, the Director of Legal Affairs with Maryland Realtors, and I am the staff liaison for the Global Business Committee, and have, in that capacity, have had great interactions and great support from all of our panelists with respect to global business. So I think just to start it out, I think maybe people who are newly licensed or have been in the business for a couple of years, or even people who've been in the business for several years, maybe haven't thought about global business, right? And building their business. Most of us start out with our friends and family, and then maybe hope to expand that a little bit. And I'm just thinking maybe Aziz, you could kind of walk us through sort of a hypothetical. Let's say I'm a licensee, I'm a realtor. I was licensed maybe, let's say 3 years ago, and I'm liking this, right? The little light bulb has gone over my head. I'm realizing this is something that I can do well. I'd like to expand on my business now. And I'm thinking, I've heard other people are conducting global business, and I've seen people traveling, and I just sort of thinking, how can I do that? How can I start to get into this global arena as a way to expand my business? Do you want to maybe start off with that, Aziz, something to
Sure.
keep in mind?
Yeah, Kathleen, thank you so much. And thank you for having me on the panel this morning. And welcome to all of you. And of course, my co-panelists as well. We're doing a very interesting seminar today. It's one that is at the forefront of a lot of real estate boards and associations these days. As we know, the world has become really small. It's a global village, and a lot of international business is taking place, not only internationally, but international buyers coming into our shores, coming into our area. So doing business globally is part of daily business today, especially in the real estate field. So for somebody who's just fairly new, like you described, Kathleen, 3 years or so in the business, doing well and beginning to see the fruits of the labor and also seeing the opportunities that might be there. One of the first things that people think about is where can I work? What else can I do outside of my day-to-day business that I'm doing locally right now? And to broaden that thought process, you first need to understand perhaps which is your easiest way of getting into doing something different. If you speak a different language, you come from a different country, your heritage is something different from your normal in the area. You've already traveled to certain places and you like a particular spot in a different part of the world, where you may be going to Mexico for holidays every year, and you've suddenly picked up an interest in Mexico, or anything like that. It's your personal interest, your personal involvement, your personal history that'll sort of give you your first idea of a growth possibility. Where would it be the easiest for me to do some business in? Okay. The second part is, once you found that, then you start researching that country. Is there something that you can fit in with? Is it something that you have an easy way into? And that is where you have to start building your database of all the information that you have up there. Where am I connected? What kind of languages do I speak? What is my interest? What kind of properties do I have interest in? But at the same time, we have a second aspect to this. We don't have to be going out there. We all are seeing the immigration happening in our own backyards. And we've got a lot of people coming in from different parts of the world into our neighborhood. How can we do business with them? Where does our link-in come into those people? Again, is it language? Is it affinity of the country? Is it family? Is it other contexts that you have from business? Perhaps your past life, you interacted with people from that part of the world. So finding out about those people and how they do business. And this is where we look at what do I need? Number one, you need to know about how they do business. And then the number two is teaching them how we do business in our area, right? And then this is the education part of the whole thing, where you have to teach and learn at the same time, okay? And this is what we try and do with, obviously, Kathleen, with our CIPS courses, right? So this is where we are going, where we teach you, the 5 continents, basically, in a span of a week. We travel the world in a week or in 5 days, and we go out and learn about how things are done in those countries. And this would be another way of you finding out or looking out better for your interest. Where would I be able to do this work? How will I be able to do it? What do I require to do this business in different parts of the world? And what do I need to do business here in my own backyard with people from different parts of the world?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So
Aziz, I'm thinking of one thing. I think in a class or some networking session, I overheard someone saying, about marketing yourself and where you can do business. And the person had said, well, I'm going to market myself all around the world.
yes.
And I think
Oh,
is that realistic, or is it really probably better to focus on a particular country or two?
That's a
Realistically?
very important point. You're certainly very welcome to market yourself around the world and get to know people around the world. Over the years, as you know, Kathleen and Jackie, and many of the people that I've interacted with in the last few years know that I have connections and contacts and people in over 60 countries around the world.
Right.
But for me to do business in 60 countries would be very difficult. I mean, if any of you have got 4 or 5 listings at the same time, you know how difficult it is to juggle around those, right? Or even 4 or 5 buyer clients. So the point that Kathleen makes is very, very important. It's nice to be known around the world, but concentrate on a certain part of the world. Start with one country, one place, and get to know that place well and get them to know you well. Build your market, build that one niche market to start with. I was young and stupid when I started this, and I started going all over the place. It was very, very hard, very difficult. I had to consolidate at one point and say, hey, this is crazy, going all over the place. I learned it firsthand that I was doing too much. I was trying to be everything to everybody everywhere. And that's not easy to do. Okay. So I would concentrate on a place, on a country, on a city, whatever it may be, even on a type of property in one country, and do it well rather than trying to be everything to everybody. Okay. So that's a very important point. You also will have to consider budgets. It's nice to travel, but it also is an expensive process to travel. And, it sometimes is cheaper to do your business from your own backyard, dealing with foreign people. And as you build, you build a capital or a budget into your business to allow for this to happen.
Right.
Okay.
Aziz, we have up here, the next thing we have education. And I know, I think a lot of the people who are listening know that we do offer the CIPS, Certified International Property Specialist. We offer that class, which is an NAR designation. But let's just talk about in addition to that, like, let's say, I've taken the CIPS class. I have a good understanding of a lot of different areas in the world, and I've focused on one particular country that I want to learn more about. How can I, sort of focus my education and learn more about a particular country? Is there any strategies that you would suggest?
Absolutely, absolutely. The CIPS is probably one of the best things you can do to start that's your basic. That's your basis of your learning. You've learned, you've got an idea of the whole world, how they do business, what type of governments they have, what kind of economies they have, what's required for doing real estate in those countries. All those things are there. But it's a very quick course in getting you going. Okay. I always say real estate in general, you can only learn in the war zone, out there, when you're out there on the ground, right? And you've got to have your boots on the ground to know this business. So learning the business on the ground, learning it from the people in the areas that you're going to do business with is going to be very, very important. There's a lot of books on economy. There's a lot of books on culture. Culture will play a very, very big role in international business. Some things that we take for granted in North America is definitely not normal for many other parts of the world. things like religion, culture, cultural habits, cultural requisitions are very, very important in doing business in many other parts of the world. So learning about their culture, we talk about a book called Kiss, Bow, and Shake Hands, for example. That's a very interesting book to read, to tell you about the different habits and styles and cultural requirements of many, many countries around the world. So educating yourself on that, of course, educating yourself on how to do business in your own country, how to do your real estate business, the rules, the regulations, how does it affect a foreign buyer or a foreign seller? And I'm sure Stephen will tell us a lot of those kinds of things a little later on. But educating yourself on all these things, such as the CIPS, would be very, very important. Reading about all these countries around the world, reading newspapers, magazines, listening to the news, all different versions of the news. There will be okay, but doing trade missions is another very important thing. This is where you travel to many of these countries in groups, in an organized way, and learn more about how they do their business, seeing their properties, seeing their countries, meeting and greeting the people, doing, networking. Networking is very, very important. But as I always keep saying, networking is not about the wine and cheese. It's about the actual meeting, greeting, knowing, and building a relationship with those people that you are meeting, okay? The wine and cheese is just a sideline to that activity, okay? So those are very important things. Joining organizations, for example, the organization that Jackie runs at the Maryland Association, the Global Council, being involved in organizations like that, getting to know other like-minded people is extremely important. It could also be the Chamber of Commerce meetings, networking meetings. It could be foreign country groups. If you are a person from Brazil and there's a Brazil USA Association, join that organization, right? And you learn more about the relationships that are going on between the countries.
Right.
We talked about FIAPSI earlier. FIAPSI, as I said, is in 60 countries around the world, over 60 countries around the world. We have all kinds of things that we do related to real estate. Members come from the legal, marketing, construction, development, finance, you name it, and we've got it. We're also the prime agency working with UN Habitat, for example, on sustainable development. We are the advisors to the UN on sustainable development. So there's a lot of different things that you can be involved in, learning about, and then developing your business going forward.
All right, thanks. I think I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention the National Association of Realtors and the global resources that are available through NAR. And I think, Jackie, I think maybe if you wanted to share sort of a practical story, some of the resources that were available to you. I think you said you had a transaction involving Belize, I believe, and you were able to tap into some resources through NAR to make some connections there. Did you want to maybe give an explanation of how that worked?
Yeah, absolutely. So the National Association of Realtors have the ambassador program. So there's ambassador to each country that there's a partner that is in partnership with the National Association of Realtors. I had a client that wanted to do something in Belize, wanted to buy something in Belize, and that was my go-to. Immediately locate the ambassador to the Belize and got some good referrals there. So, that's really what they're there for, is to help us to navigate resources in these countries that we wouldn't necessarily, have information on. So yeah, that is ideal. The other sources are, Kathleen, depending on how you anchor your professional self. Say if you're a member of the Women's Council of Realtors, for example, they have a global arm. YPN has a global arm. So it just depends on how you anchor your professional business. This is, part of why it does make sense to, anchor yourself onto, as he says, like mine realtors as well, where you could get yourself fully networked and fully resourced. But yeah, definitely the National Association of Realtors Ambassador Program is an ideal first stop if you find yourself needing tangible resources in a particular country that you don't have access or have information to.
Yeah, that's terrific. It's sort of a built-in network.
It
to get
is.
started on developing your network, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
All right, let me move. I think we kind of had touched on this a little bit, as Aziz had referenced, sort of you can't serve the whole world and you can't do it alone. So part of, if you're going to be helping clients who are in other countries, we need to understand, how those other countries work and develop relationships with professionals who operate in those countries. Did you want to maybe speak to this, Aziz? How would you, creating a team, and how would you go about who should be on your team, and how do you create a team?
Absolutely. And team is a good word, because that's literally what it is. It's your team. It's your backup. It's the group that's working together with you. Now, these are not people you're going to have to employ and be on your payroll, but these are the people that are going to help support your transaction and support your clients. Obviously, everything we're doing is to support our clients, right? So who should be on this team? Who are the players we should have? Number one, don't forget to get the buy-in from your own brokerage to support you in your activity. Okay, this is very, very important, because you are working for your brokerage, you are doing things for them. They are your first number one line of support as well. Okay, so that's a very important factor. But then your team, it's an outside team, it's an external team that are called in as and when required. This is relationships you got to build with people like CPAs. These are people who are going to be able to give you idea, and of course, ideally CPAs not only working in your country, but CPAs who have the knowledge of the country you're going to work in. And that might be in your own country, or they may be in the country that you are working in. So build those relationships, get to know the CPAs in your country and in the country, the destination country. Attorneys, very, very important. You've got tax attorneys, you've got real estate transactional attorneys, doing the conveyancing, knowing people like in the title business and how things are done. And that's Stephen's specialty. He's going to talk to us about that and tell us how they can be a big player in your team. Okay, the lenders, are they lending to foreigners in your country? Or can people from your country go out and buy in Italy and get funded from your own country, or whatever that requirement is? What about your realtor colleagues who are already doing work in that area? Okay, the local realtors who know that market, but also the realtors in that market. Like Jackie would have been referred to somebody in Belize who could help her. Do you want more information about the area? When you're traveling somewhere, go and visit the real estate offices in those countries and get to know some people. Okay, this of course is also what we call purposeful travel in our CIPS course. And when you come into the CIPS course, I believe that the entire course gets paid up by knowing what purposeful travel is all about. Okay, it's a beneficial travel. And we'll talk more about it when you're in the course, okay? But these are the kinds of people you need. And how do you meet them? And that's going to be an important thing. Jackie referred to connecting through the ambassador, the Belize ambassador of NAR. NAR, when they have the annual conferences, go out to them. In November this year, it's in Anaheim, for example. There's an international area all laid out for for foreign countries to be represented there, and for you to go out and meet with them, okay, and build your relationships through that. One of your easiest and best ways of doing business and source of relationship is Canada. We're just across the border from you. Okay, we're the biggest partners in the world. Okay, utilize that relationship, become members of the Canadian Real Estate Association. They have a global arm as well. Okay, but getting to know all these people, building these relationships, building your team. This is your team. This is the team. You might have your real estate team. That's not the team we're talking about, that are your seller, your agents that are working with you. We're talking about your backup team. Okay, and they are very, very important to you.
Right. I would just say, Aziz, I've seen something even honestly as simple as a Facebook group. There are some networking groups for, again, through the National Association or even through our state association. And people will post things as simple as, like you said, intentional travel, purposeful travel. Someone who was traveling to a particular country they were interested in and wanted to learn a little bit more about real estate there and, the second home market. And someone else in the group, I think, referred them to a colleague in, whichever beautiful, fabulous, wonderful island place this was, and introduced that person. And the two of them hooked up, I think, for coffee or whatever it was. And then this person went and saw some real estate developments with that person. And now, again, of course, is developing that relationship and has contacts. And it's just networking, which I think is what most of our members do all day, every day.
Every day. And we do that. That's our way of doing business. Realtors are generally very talkative, never shy, and they're always sharing knowledge. That's very, very important for us.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Actually, let me just think for a second as well. I think we kind of have been talking primarily about helping people who want to purchase, sell, or buy property overseas. But part of, I think, the global component of business is really right here in Maryland as well. I think we're fortunate. We're so close to DC that there's quite a large, a strong international community here in Maryland, and immigrants from a variety of countries and so many different languages spoken here in this area, and so many people from so many different cultures. Part of our knowledge and understanding that we could use to help people purchasing overseas can also be applied directly right here in Maryland. Maybe Jackie, did you want to talk about that a little bit? How this sort of global education can help you with your business here in Maryland, right here in our own backyard.
Absolutely. And again, I hate to beat a dead horse, but the CIPS course is really one of the elements that prepare you ideally for that. But yeah, this is a very transient community. I have clients right now that are German and from Switzerland, and it is not unusual. It's not unusual happening to have clients from all over. Getting an understanding as to who you're working with and what is important to that community, how they think, how they do business is really, really key. And getting that global education, that basic fundamental education goes very far in ensuring those work relationships are successful. I've worked with all kinds of people from all over the world, and I'm sure realtors here at Maryland has the very same experience. And sometimes you get with a particular group and you get referred on and on and on and on and on. What really becomes key is understanding what is important to this particular group, and to be able to build on that relationship. So this is an ideal place for that kind of thing.
Right. And I think that kind of ties in with what Aziz had said earlier. Education isn't just sitting and taking one class one day. Education is kind of the whole, it's ongoing, it's continuous. And you would be sharing your education with your clients and what this is how things are done here, but also they may be educating you to a certain extent on, how things worked back home in Greece or what their expectations are, how they understand the process to work. So I think that's a really good point. It's sort of an ongoing thing where learning is just going to be constant to really develop in this space. I think
And it
understanding the
also, Kathleen, if you don't mind me adding, it's part of also the benefit of, again, as I said earlier, anchoring yourself to associations like an ARIA, FIAPSI, as Aziz talked about. And he also mentioned your brokerage firm. Depending on what brokerage firm you're in, there's an opportunity there to get international support, so working with different, variety of clients as well. So like your Remaxes, your Power Bankers, the varying company that has that international Sotheby's that have an international arm has always been beneficial to helping to build those relationships and getting referrals of all different types of clientele.
Right, that's terrific. All right, so let's say, I guess I'm just kind of like walking through the transaction. I've been licensed. I want to start developing my business. I'm focusing on a particular country or two. I've got a referral. Someone's coming to the United States. They want to purchase a property here in Maryland. I'm working with this client. I guess the next phase of it, we're under contract. Yay, we're happy, we're succeeding, right? We're moving forward with the transaction and we're going to get to settlement. We're under contract and we're considering and dealing with issues that come up in every transaction. Maybe Steve could chime in here. I think there may be some additional issues to think about, or maybe different timeframes if the party, let's say the purchaser is excuse me, let's start with a foreign-born seller first. Someone who's here in Maryland and they were born overseas. They're not a US citizen. They're going to sell property. I know there's some considerations that come into play there. Do you want to maybe briefly outline those, Steve?
I will. First of all, thank you for having me speak today. And the truth is, we are living in a global community now. And just to give you an example of this area, just to tell you, Montgomery County alone, 1 out of every residents of Montgomery County is foreign born. It's 25%. That's pretty high, and that constitutes immigrants, people working here internationally. We are the home of, you have World Bank, IMF, embassies. You have a lot of different international organizations in the DC area. And also, this is just a very popular area for people to come and study as well. So you have students, you have people from different countries of the world who come and invest in buying properties in the DC area, which is very, very popular. When you watch to contact on, like actually comment on what Aziz was talking about, really being aware of what's going on globally, because situations in the world could affect people coming and buying in the United States. There's times where there's political upheaval in certain countries, and people there that are not feeling so secure will want to invest in real estate and purchase properties in the United States as potentially a get out, a place to come to in case things get really, really bad for them. This has been historic, and this tends to be an area where people will come to because it's a global community. It's very international. One thing to be aware of is, and I see as we're talking about, is foreign-born sellers, foreign-born purchasers. Now, there's something called FIRPTA, which is title companies usually don't like to have to deal with because it's a headache, but it's a reality of what happens. When you have foreign sellers who do not have social security numbers, are not tied to the US, they potentially have to pay a tax, the FIRPTA tax, which is to actually up to 10% of the gross sales price. So we're not talking about a net, we're talking about a gross. And for certain companies, it can be up to 15% if the property is not going to be a principal residence. So there's usually capped at 300,000. The property value has to be over 300,000. But knowing that you might have this situation, you look at what the possibilities of not having to pay FIRPTA. What many times people can qualify for exemptions if they know, this happens to me with people that have been here for a long time. I recently had a case, Canadian citizen actually, had been working for the World Bank for about 18 years and was retiring and moving back to Canada and selling their principal residence. They didn't pay taxes. They didn't have a social security card or a tax ID. They were on a visa program. So they would have been subject to this tax. However, they appropriately hired the right accountant ahead of time who filed something with the IRS where we were able to hold it and waiting for them to come and give us the exemption or what the amount that is due. It'll have to be paid. And that's being held in escrow currently until we get that payment, that bill from the IRS. It'll probably be fully exempt. There's also other situations where we have a lot of people in this country that have what we called tax IDs, and they are legally residing here, but they are not U.S. citizens or permanent residents. So they don't technically have a social security number. They have a tax ID number. Many of them could be subject to the FERPTA tax. However, there is a clause within the IRS that allows that if they can show proof that they reside in the U.S. for at least 6 months out of the year and have paid taxes for the last 3 years, they would be exempt from paying the FERPTA tax. So what FERPTA tax is really trying to tax people who are earning money off of a real estate transaction, and there's no way for them to declare it tax-wise. We have something similar to Maryland called Maryland withholding tax for non-Maryland residents when they're selling properties. Many of you that are Maryland agents know this as well. So this is kind of on a larger scale. So I also think it's important when you are with a foreign client who is not going to be residing here and not going to have tax ID or not have any ties to the U.S. to realize that an investment, if they don't set it up through